The MCAT Cars Podcast, session number 14. The Cars section of the MCAT gives thousands of pre-meds nightmares every night. Whether you're an ESL student, lack confidence while reading, or are a slow reader like me, Jack Westin and the medical school headquarters are here to help you score higher in every section so you can be confident you're ready to get the MCAT score of your dreams. Welcome back to the MCAT Cars Podcast. Thank you for taking the time to join myself as well as Jack Westin here on this podcast to help you better understand how to break down passages not only on the car section, but on every section of the MCAT. This week, we're diving in with another great article, this time from Wired magazine. Jack Westin back for some more MCAT Cars Podcast. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm excited to read. I'm excited for this particular article because I love Wired magazine, so I'm excited to see what we're diving into.
Yeah, this one is more interesting. You're probably not going to see something like this on the real test, but it's good for reading comp. You know, if you want to improve your reading comprehension, your understanding of how grammar and vocab are intertwined with passages, I think this is a very good example of that. So we're going to see some very hard sentences in a rather interesting topic, passage on an interesting topic. So we're going to, it's something that we haven't really dealt with. And I think it's a good step in the right direction in terms of how do you deal with that stuff. Go ahead.
So before we jump in, number one, I want to congratulate you on 10,000 downloads for this podcast already, which is awesome. And number two, as we release this, you have another course starting up. So real quick, for somebody who's listening to this podcast, what should be their thinking for like, oh, maybe I should go check out this course from Jack Westin?
Yeah, so the course is really focused on, well, first of all, thank you. You're amazing at what you do, and I don't think this would have grown as fast as it would have without you. And yeah, I mean, it's been really fun. I love doing this. I hope students love this. I hope students find this helpful. Again, we're really focused on reading comprehension when it comes to this podcast. And if you have any feedback, email me or email Ryan, and I would love to hear your feedback. My email is jack@jackwestin.com. It's my personal email, so if you have questions or concerns about anything, always email me. But yeah, I mean, overall, this podcast is primarily focused on reading comprehension. If you want to take the course, it's more about how to think through the passage, how to use that information that you understand to answer the questions. So the course really helps with thinking. It helps with your ability to capture the right information. We don't necessarily capture the right information in this podcast. We're focused on understanding everything. And this is very tedious work, but it makes you a better and more confident reader, which is important. I mean, you need to have the right reading level in order to succeed on these passages. And some students are just not at that level, and that's fine. So, but once you get to that level and once you have that information, how do you use that information to answer very mundane, very complicated questions like weakeners and assumptions and inference questions and whatnot? That's what the course is really about. We also focus on timing. We focus on accuracy. We focus on the entire exam. Everything that we cover in the CARS course helps with the sciences because the entire test is reading. Every section of this test, whether it's the physical, the bio, the behavioral, every single section is reading a passage and then answering questions based on those passages. Content is important, but the CARS course does not cover any content because content is so minimal on this exam, and most students already pretty much know the content well. And if you don't, you can always check out Khan Academy. You can always YouTube it. You can always get a prep book. There's so many great prep books out there that can teach you the content. But in terms of test-taking ability, in terms of finishing on time, in terms of being efficient, these are things that we work on. And I think that it's a great investment if you're willing to work hard, if you're willing to listen. That's where the course separates from the podcast and every other course out there. I mean, I really think it focuses on things that really matter at the end of the day. And I think it will make you a smarter, more efficient test taker, not just on the MCAT, but every other exam you take, whether it's the board exams, whether it's your medical school exams, whether it's, who knows, maybe a final you're going to be taking in biochem next year. It will make you a better test taker. So yeah, that's
Awesome.
That's the difference.
Medicalschoolhq.net/Jack Westin for that link and a $100 off coupon, which Jack has given you to save some money on the course, which is awesome.
Yeah, I love students who are proactive in their studies, who work hard, who try to, be the best version of themselves. So if you're listening to the podcast and you're trying to get something out of it, I want to help you. I want to give you as much as we can. Same for people who use the daily passages. Same for people who attend my free trial sessions. I like to help students who want to help themselves. And you guys are the future of medicine. So we really appreciate you. You guys are going to be saving so many people's lives and impacting so many people in the future. It's the least we can do.
And one quick follow-up: even though it's an online course, seating and availability is limited, correct?
Yeah, that is the issue. It is limited because I want to keep the quality high, and I like to interact with every one of my students directly. So I get to know every student very, very well. So we do keep the live courses very small, but everything is structured and everything is self-paced. So if you can't attend a live session, you can kind of go at your own pace and watch the recordings at your own pace. But I have live sessions every week. And multiple every week, so that you can ask me questions, interact with me, go through passages with me. You're gonna, if you're in the course, you're gonna read the passage with me, answer questions with me. I'm gonna ask you questions. You're gonna really understand the strategies that I think are important through a series of lectures that you're gonna learn on your own, and then you're gonna have homework. You're gonna have office hours if you need it. It's a university level course, so imagine a 4-unit level university course. Give yourself that amount of time to study every week. And if you do that, I think you're going to benefit tremendously.
All right. Awesome.
Okay.
Again, medicalschoolhq.net/Jack Westin for that. All right. So we'll jump into today's article. Again, if you want a link to the article, the podcast app that you are listening to it, just go over to the show notes in your podcast app and the link should be there. If not, go to mcatcarspodcast.com, find this episode, and the link and everything will be there as well. All right, so we're jumping into a Wired article. You want the real windows into someone's soul? You want the real windows into someone's soul. Okay, so it's a question. The window into someone's soul is interesting question to start off. All right, so I want to keep reading and see what they're talking about here. Look at their Reddit subscriptions. And so this one is a little weird because you have to know what Reddit is. And so Reddit is like an online social forum for people who want to go and hang out and talk to other people based on their likes and passions, etc. It's all broken down into stuff like that. So there's a great pre-med Reddit if you're not on there already. And so the author here is saying you want to look into someone's soul, look at what they subscribe to on Reddit. Like what communities are they involved in on Reddit? That's what they're asking here and saying.
Yeah, so the first sentence seems a little weird. We don't know exactly what they're talking about, but when they talk about windows, we're thinking about an opening, right, into someone's soul. So you're thinking about seeing someone's soul, understanding their soul. That could be a little bit more philosophical for some students to understand. But that's the gist of it. Now, the second sentence, look at their Reddit subscriptions. You make a great point. What the heck is Reddit? I think pretty much anyone listening to this podcast knows what Reddit is, right? I mean, you've probably been on Reddit. You've probably seen Reddit. There's an MCAT Reddit, a pre-med Reddit. There's a bunch of Reddits out there, right? So you probably know what Reddit is. But what if you didn't know what Reddit was, right? What if you had no idea? That's okay because they're saying it's a subscription of some sort. Maybe it's a magazine subscription. Maybe it's some kind of newspaper subscription. Who knows, right? We don't know exactly, but it's some sort of subscription. And as you keep reading, they should be able to educate you on exactly what Reddit should be in a very passive way. They're not going to directly say, "Oh, Reddit is the following." But as you keep reading, you're going to be educated as to understand what it really entails to be a Reddit. To what does Reddit include? What kind of things does it do? And I hopefully they'll do that. Hopefully they'll tell us that. And I firmly believe if you don't give up on what you're reading and you don't panic, you're going to be fine. You're going to understand enough to get the gist. So let's go ahead.
It's all there. Their passions, their hobbies, their ideological leanings, their love of terrible haircuts and sublime, anonymized cringe. So they're now telling us what these Reddit subscriptions are. They're things about hobbies and ideological leanings and terrible haircuts, etc.
Exactly. Okay.
And if they're anything like me, those subscriptions also tell the tale of a life spent diving down rabbit holes. And so this is one of those kind of idioms that an ESL student may not understand what a rabbit hole is, and diving down rabbit holes, but obviously I understand what a rabbit hole is. And it's one of those things where you kind of get lost chasing something, getting distracted, and like 2 hours later, you're like, what was I just doing? So that's a rabbit hole. And the author here is saying that the subscriptions on Reddit are telling us about these people just chasing rabbit holes, a life spent chasing these rabbit holes, diving down them.
Yeah, right now there are students who go, well, how am I supposed to know what a rabbit hole is? Good news is that MCAT doesn't really focus on idioms. And yeah, that is an idiom. It's something that isn't really clear unless it has a meaning behind it that may not be directly obvious. That's kind of the definition of an idiom. So, I mean, we can, like you said, a rabbit hole is kind of like, it comes from, I believe, like Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, I believe, right? So, when you go down the rabbit hole, you go into this new world. Even Matrix, if you've ever watched that movie, it's like one of my favorite movies. They mention it. You kind of go into this new world, this new magical kind of world. And it's not clear why or how, but they are trying to say that Reddit gets you kind of immersed in something, right? Something different, something unique, and magical in some ways, or psychologically impactful. So, overall, you don't know what rabbit hole means. That's fine. You can keep that in mind, and hopefully they'll tell us what they mean by it. They'll explain it. They'll give us context behind the term rabbit holes. So yeah, great. Go ahead.
Okay. So next paragraph. Origami, board games, trail running, pens, cycling, mechanical keyboards, Scrabble. I know, God, I know. There are jokes to be made here. Trust me. Trust that I've already made them all myself. So this is interesting. All of those things were individual sentences with a period after each one. And it's a list. We don't know what that list is yet. And so, again, being a stressed pre-med student in the heat of it, I'm trying to extract as much information as possible. And the beginning of this paragraph just confuses me because I'm like, why are you telling me all these things?
Well, they did educate us on what it does, right? It's your passions, your hobbies in the first paragraph, right? Reddit has something to do with your passions and hobbies, your ideological leanings, and they bring up terrible haircuts and other stuff, right? And now they're bringing up origami and board games, etc. It seems like they're very specific stuff, very unique stuff, and maybe the rabbit hole contains all these little things, right? Like you can go into this passion, that passion, whatever it is. You can kind of get a sense for that, even though you may not know what Reddit means. Now, if you do know what Reddit means, you're probably thinking, wow, this is easy. I already know that there's a subreddit for every single damn thing in the world, right? Yep. So you're probably thinking, okay, I understand this really well. But what if you didn't know what Reddit means? Could you still get this? Yeah, because it's a passion. Reddit contains these passions, right? You don't know exactly how it's organized or how it's structured, but you have enough to keep reading. All right, go ahead.
Whenever my interest attaches itself to a new thing, which has happened my entire life, cyclically and all-encompassingly, I tend to develop a singular, insatiable appetite for information about that thing. So the author is saying that there's new passions that develop in his or her life, and what happens around that new passion, that they just become enveloped by that passion.
This sentence explains everything about that rabbit hole. It explains everything about all these different hobbies or whatever, these activities that you need to know, right? I think everyone has at some point found some kind of interest where they were obsessed with it, right? You spent like days Wikipediaing it, YouTubing it, Google searching it, finding books on it. This is a common theme for a lot of people, right? So if you can visualize yourself doing this, you have a good idea of where the author is going, right? We're talking about certain hobbies that we're really interested in and focused on and passionate about. It seems like Reddit kind of helps expand on that in some ways, or like supports this in some ways. So basically, we know that Reddit contains our passions, that has something to do with our ability to focus on it. All right, go ahead.
Hey, you know what the internet is really good at? Enabling singular, insatiable appetites. So the author is now taking, it seems like, what he or she is saying was specific to Reddit, and now is saying that's what the whole internet is for, is enabling you to go down these rabbit holes and enable these singular, insatiable appetites.
Yeah, exactly. But what else do they do? What is Reddit? What could Reddit be?
I don't know.
The internet. Something to do with the internet.
Yeah.
Now we now know that Reddit is some element of the internet, right? We probably didn't know that before, but now we do, right? So, okay, great. All right, yeah. And so far, we're talking about certain specific activities that you're interested in, and the internet kind of supports that. And yeah, okay.
Okay. Especially since 2005. So they're continuing on this thought about the internet enabling singular, insatiable appetites since 2005. That's the year Reddit and YouTube launched within months of each other, and obsession became centralized. So the obsession of trying to learn these things, and they're saying it became centralized, I'm assuming, around Reddit and around YouTube. So two places on the internet where you can go enable your singular, insatiable appetite.
Exactly. And now they're considering Reddit as important as YouTube, and pretty much everyone knows what YouTube is. So YouTube and Reddit have some similarities. Mm-hmm. They're both internet companies that maybe contain information in some ways that help with your passions, right? Yep. Okay.
You had options before that, blogs and message boards and Usenet forums, but they weren't exactly magnets of cross-pollination. So the author is saying before 2005, before Reddit and YouTube, there were other things, other options to go to on the internet. The magnets of cross-pollination, I think, would confuse me, and does confuse me, of cross-pollination. Are they talking about pollinating between users of the internet or between different websites on the internet? I'm not sure.
Does it matter?
I don't know.
It does not matter.
Okay.
Whether it's the actual users, whether it's the information of the users, all you got to realize is that before Reddit and YouTube, there was something lacking. That's what matters. The big picture is what really matters. Is that the author is trying to say, look, Reddit and YouTube are fulfilling something that wasn't there, right? It's fulfilling something that is unique and new and is important. The actual specifics on what magnets of cross-pollination mean make no difference to us. Now, we can try to understand it. I mean, it probably means the message boards and forums were not exactly able to communicate with one another in some ways. But I'm sure that if this is important, they will explain it in a very unique and direct manner. So let's go ahead and continue reading and see if they educate us on what they mean by this.
They didn't fully open the floodgates to minute details and the masses yearning to pour over them. Open the floodgates to minute details and the masses yearning to pour over them. I'm not sure what they're trying to say here. They're trying to explain the magnets of cross-pollination, but open the floodgates. I'm not sure what the author's trying to say with that writing.
Well, with the previous sentence, there was something lacking, right? There was no cross-pollination. And pollination just means, the interactions between one and another, right? So things that interact with one another. Now they're saying that the floodgates, again, is analogous to information being, or anything being released through the gates, right? Floods are usually very heavy waters that come through certain gates. Mm-hmm. So they're specifically mentioning that minute details are coming through the gates. So in some ways, Reddit and YouTube are releasing this information that was once maybe limited in some ways. So that's kind of their analogy here. They're bringing up floodgates to show you that, hey, Reddit and YouTube are opening up the gates so that all this information, or quote unquote water, is coming through. So it ends up being that cross-pollination probably refers to not necessarily people interacting, but details and data being released everywhere, something along those lines. But again, it doesn't make that much of a difference. It's great if you know this sentence, but it won't change your basic understanding of how YouTube and Reddit are important in some ways. And that's what really matters when you answer questions, not, oh yeah, what does minute details and masses actually refer to? The masses yearning are people who kind of dive into this content.
Okay. Then on opposite sides of the country, two different small groups of 20-something dudes created twin engines of infatuation. Twin engines of infatuation. So, it's interesting because I think what they're talking about are Reddit and YouTube. But it's weird because they kind of talk about Reddit and YouTube to begin with, and then they take a break and go backwards in time, and now they're coming back to when YouTube and Reddit were created. But that would be confusing, I think, if I was trying to read this quickly.
Right. So why the heck are they bringing up 20-something dudes created twin engines of infatuation? Probably to go back and talk about it a little bit and why it was developed. Who knows? But they could do that. They could easily break what they're talking about and go into a whole new discussion.
Yeah.
So be prepared for that. And it doesn't have to happen in a whole new paragraph. It could happen within the same paragraph. That's where focus and reading for understanding can help a lot. Okay. So yes, just to clarify, they're now talking about small groups of people who created twin engines of infatuation. Now the twins are probably Reddit and YouTube. Mm-hmm. Engines refers to power, right? Power of infatuation. Again, we're talking about passions. So maybe YouTube and Reddit have something to do with our passions again, right? And how that is being sped up or being powered through. Okay, Go ahead.
Between their massive tents and their ease of use, Reddit and YouTube tore away the guardrail that had always stood between serial hobbyists and oblivion. Oh, all right. Very descriptive here. So the guardrail that stood between hobbyists and oblivion. Now, oblivion, I'm not sure who they're at. I don't know what they're referring to in oblivion. But it just sounds like the sentence the author is saying, hey, Reddit and YouTube made the internet easier to use.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, oblivion kind of means that it faded away. It's not there anymore. Serial hobbyist refers to specific people that are interested in specific hobbies. So in some ways, Reddit and YouTube is allowing people to really focus on certain hobbies, but maybe to others and maybe not that important. We don't really know exactly what this sentence is trying to explain, but it's leaning towards that kind of discussion. At the end of the day, none of these sentences really matter because all you really need to know is that Reddit and YouTube have become central places where people obsess over things. And that was literally the first sentence of this paragraph, or the second sentence. So if you understood that, the rest of this follows through with that and gives you more context as to how this is or what it is, but it's not going to change our bigger picture, right? And the bigger picture so far for this paragraph is that Reddit and YouTube are those central places of passion.
Yeah. So next paragraph. For all the hand-wringing about both sites, YouTube's gameable recommendation algorithm that can radicalize dummies at the drop of a meme, Reddit's Colonian foot speed when dealing with bad actors and hate speech in the more noisome subreddits, both are incredible resources for the participatory realm. So it sounds like there are the hand wringing about both sides. So it sounds like the author's saying, hey, there are issues with both sides, but on the bright side, they're incredible resources.
That's great. Yeah. Now, do we exactly know what colonian means?
No.
Probably not, but that's okay. It's not like a word we go off and talk about all the time. We're not going to go up to someone and go, oh, you're so colonian, right? It's not something we use, but we could kind of figure out what it's probably saying. YouTube's gameable recommendation algorithm that can radicalize dummies at the drop of a meme. Sounds kind of negative, but again, you may not know that. Reddit's Colonian foot speed. Colonian refers to turtles, like a group of turtles. You don't need to know that, though. So basically, Reddit's like slow. Colonian is referring to slow foot speed when dealing with bad actors and hate speech. See, the thing is, you don't really need to know what Colonian means because you know it's talking about Reddit dealing with bad actors and hate speech. And it's saying it's noisome, so maybe it's noisy or something that's irritating. So it's in some ways it's negative, right? And you picked up on that, so great. Both are incredible resources for the participatory realm, so they're still great. Even though they have these issues, one has these dummy issues, who knows what they're saying there, and the other one has this issue with not dealing with the bad actors quick enough, they're still great. They're still awesome. So not a lot is changing here, but it is telling us that they're participating. So I'm keeping that in mind, that Reddit and YouTube have some kind of participation factor into it. Maybe that's going to be important when we get to question, if they had questions for this passage. But overall, nothing is different. We're just still talking about Reddit and YouTube and how they're helpful for us in some ways. Okay, go ahead.
Watching more experienced people do what you're trying to do, sharing setups and techniques, even getting support and commiseration from those who are similarly rapturously afloat in the same thing you can't stop reading and thinking about. It's not just a recipe for intellectual indulgence, but for improvement as well. And so the author is painting the picture of somebody who's using Reddit or YouTube to learn or to solve a problem or to do whatever they're trying to do on Reddit or YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're saying that, look, you can do all these things, and it can help you in some ways. Now, I love this sentence because this is the kind of sentence where a lot of students get lost, even though they think they find the passage interesting. So there are a lot of students who go, oh, yeah, I like this passage because they like the topic, right? They're interested in the internet, they're interested in YouTube and Reddit, but then they don't necessarily understand the sentence. And that can mess with them when they get to the question. So if you've ever done a passage where you felt like, oh, yeah, I really get what I'm reading, and then you get to the questions and you don't really know how to answer them or you don't do well, it's probably because you're not focused on the exact exact arguments or the exact ideas that they're trying to tell you. So over here, they're just basically explaining again that, it can be very helpful for us. Now, does it really make a difference if you read it or not? I think it's important to read and to pay attention to this. But could they ask questions about this? Unlikely in this circumstance, but it could happen in the future where they ask certain questions about details or sentences that may be confusing. So yeah, go ahead.
On YouTube, that value comes from the creator. On Reddit, it comes from the comments. Swap the two at your own peril. So they're saying YouTube, the creator is creating the value. The people who are making the videos on Reddit, it's the comments from people where the value comes from.
Yeah, exactly. And they're telling us now, they're educating us on what Reddit is important, what the importance of Reddit, comments. So comments on the internet. And that's interesting because within 4 paragraphs, we now know what Reddit is. They've explained it really well. Reddit is a place where you go find specific information, and it has comments, it has discussion boards, it has things where you can ask questions to experts, and you can get sympathy from other people, right? All that is explained in 4 paragraphs, but it was done passively. It was not done actively. It's not like a regular textbook that explains things in a very active manner, like, oh, Newton's first law, inertia, it means this. They don't do it that way for cars. For cars, they'll explain things over time, over the course of the passage, and they expect you to pick up on things. That's where your sharpness becomes very important. So being sharp, being alert about how they describe certain things, about how they're leaning, their direction of their arguments or their tone, that becomes very, very important. So great. Okay, so let's go ahead and read the next paragraph, last paragraph.
Rabbit holes are what make beauty YouTube such a colossus. Why the Ask Science subreddit has 16 million subscribers. So going back to the rabbit holes discussion, the idiom of rabbit holes, and so the author is saying rabbit holes are what make beauty YouTube, and if you're not a YouTuber and you don't know what beauty YouTube is, that may be a little bit weird, or if you're not on Reddit and you don't know the Ask Science subreddit. So there's some words here that may be a little bit challenging, again, going back to the idiom as well. So they're just saying people going down these rabbit holes are what make these two different channels, to lack a better word, so big, right? 16 million subscribers. That's a lot of people.
Yeah. Yep, that's it.
Okay. But they also hold a secret. The deeper you go, the tighter it gets. So now the author's trying to hint at something, tell us something that maybe we don't know, holding a secret. The tighter it gets, I'm not sure what the author's trying to say. Hopefully they'll explain that in a minute.
Exactly.
Okay. That's because a rabbit hole is a filter bubble of sorts, albeit one that's labeled as such and explicitly opted into. You're there because you're interested in this thing, as is everyone else. And under such celebratory scrutiny, that thing distends, its perceived stature far outweighing its real-life impact. Whew. Okay, so let's break it down. So they're explaining rabbit hole, filter bubble. So filter, I'm assuming they're saying, hey, well, let's use the beauty YouTube. So filter would be beauty, and we are saying that we're interested in this thing. We opted into it because we're watching a video.
Right.
And the distends is interesting. Perceived stature far outweighing its real-life impact. I'm not quite sure what the author is trying to tell me by the distends. And in this paragraph, distends is italicized.
Right. Okay. Well, we don't, this is a very hard sentence to understand. Again, on an easy topic passage, can you get sentences like this? Absolutely. Right. And you even know that, you're interested in the topic. So, it's kind of ironic. Now, with this sentence, it's tough to understand, but I think the last part kind of explains everything you need to know, right? The sense or perception of Reddit and YouTube far outweigh its real-life impact. So maybe Reddit and YouTube, the stuff that you're doing on there, is not as important as you may think it is. And that's, I believe, what they mean by the tighter the rabbit hole, right? Or the rabbit hole becomes tighter. It becomes tighter because you're becoming more focused on it. It's only for you in a way, right? The hole only fits kind of you and your perspective, your passions. Mm-hmm. So it seems like there's some kind of disconnect with other people, that it's really focused on you and it's not as impactful to everyone, right? Or maybe it might not even be impactful for you, for all we know. I mean, they're not really explaining it as well as we want, but maybe, the next sentence will explain it a little better.
Okay. Just because there are a million opinions about something doesn't make it important to anyone outside the bubble, let alone crucial. So it sounds like the author is saying, inside these bubbles, the YouTube bubble, the subreddit, the Reddit bubble, that you're reading all of these opinions, all of these comments, these thoughts, it doesn't really mean they're important outside of YouTube and Reddit.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's kind of bringing in some kind of negativity here,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's saying that maybe the more specific you get, the fewer people care. People don't care as much, or it's not as important. So yeah, I mean that's what they're trying to explain here. They could have been a little bit more clear. The MCAT would probably be a little bit more clear, but I wouldn't be surprised if you got sentences like this. It could happen. Great. Now, what do you think the passage is about? Like, what do you think the author really wants you to know after reading this passage?
Oh, that YouTube and Reddit are these sites that people go to scratch their itches of knowledge, but maybe ultimately they're not that good for you.
Yeah, I mean, really the key here is it's focused on your obsessions, right?
Yeah.
Your fixations. They do mention positives, they do mention negatives. So the author overall seems a little bit neutral on this, right? Maybe it's great, maybe it's not so great, maybe it's not that important. But they don't make a very clear distinction on which side they agree on. They just mention both sides. But ultimately, they are arguing, they are saying that it's very specific. These things are focused on specific things that you may be passionate about. Okay.
All right.
Great.
I think if the author wrote about the MCAT Cars podcast, it would be all positive things.
I agree. And Reddit is very popular. So when students read about Reddit, they think about it. And I think this is great. You're thinking about Reddit, you're thinking about YouTube. Are these things actually as beneficial as they are perceived, right? And maybe they are, maybe they're not. I like to think, again, this is outside of the passage, so don't bring in your bias, obviously. Mm-hmm. Stick to what the author's saying and try to understand the author's perspective on things. But my opinion, I think these are great resources that help you understand information from so many different angles. But I like the author's perspective here. Maybe these angles don't mean much to other people, right? Because they're so specific. So, it's interesting to think about.
All right, so there you have it. There's more of the MCAT Cars podcast. I know we've been getting some great feedback from some listeners. If this podcast is helping you master the car section and other sections of the MCAT, we would love your feedback. You can email me, Ryan at medicalschoolhq.net or Jack at jackwestin.com. If you're looking for some more personalized attention with your MCAT Cars strategy, with your MCAT Cars prep, go check out medicalschoolhq.net/Jack Westin and learn about his MCAT Cars strategy course. By going to that link, it automatically activates a $100 coupon that you can use towards the MCAT Cars strategy course, where you are going to get over 70 hours of instruction to learn to master the critical thinking skills necessary to get the car score of your dreams. You'll get personalized attention. You'll gain confidence with clear, proven methods from Jack Westin, the expert in the cars section. Go to medicalschoolhq.net/Jack Westin to activate that $100 off coupon, or text the word CARS coupon to 44222 and we'll send you that link as well. Hope you have a great week. We'll see you next time here on the MCAT Cars podcast. When you use the links provided in this podcast, you're helping to support MedEd Media and the podcasts that we produce. Not only do you get a discount, but we earn a small commission as well. Thank you for your support.